I'm back at my place. On the drive over here, the thought occurred to me, you've been out of the hospital for, say, a year and a half. You haven't been taking your medication for about 9 months. Isn't it about time you go back into the hospital? Well, time will tell. This is a marathon, not a sprint, but this is the longest I've been out of the hospital since my first hospitalization. So I'm going to share with you the method, but before I do, I will tell you that like many people who've been hospitalized, I am not convinced that I have a mental illness. Okay? I will tell you what would convince me that I did have a mental illness. Things like seeing visions, hearing voices, things like that would convince me. But I do not hear voices. I do not see visions, anything like that. So let's get into the method. Sorry, I'm trying to collect my thoughts here. The method is based on two figures, two great men of the last century, Martin Luther King Jr. and Gandhi. Okay. Now, I use this method every time I go into the hospital. I refuse to take the medication, number one. Number two, I go on a hunger strike. Now, when I was hospitalized at the local place where I live, I've been hospitalized there twice. First time I went in there, I didn't eat for 2.5 weeks straight. Okay? That's how long the hunger strike lasted. I got out of there. Now, when I went back in for the second time, I believe it was 3 weeks. Pretty dang close to 3 weeks. And in 3 weeks, I lost 40 to 45 pounds. I went from 185 to 145. I gained it all back. But that hunger strike does two things. Number one, it shows when your family members come to visit you, and 3 weeks have gone by and you've lost 45 pounds, they're gonna think, hey, we brought him in here. Well, they're gonna tell themselves, that we brought him in here because we care about him, we love him, cherish him, things that maybe one should suspect, right? But when they see, hey, he's not getting better, he's losing all his weight, they feel it inside, right? They think twice, hey, maybe we shouldn't hospitalize him against his will anymore, right? So right there, you can hopefully expect less hospitalizations right there, right? Number two, the hospital you go to, right, thinks to themselves, we've seen him twice, right? The second time we saw him, he didn't eat for 3 weeks. Do we want to admit him a second time or a third time? No, we do not, right? The risks become great to the hospital. What are we going to encounter here, right? Are we going to have to put in a feeding tube? What is the morale of the staff? What are the patients thinking? Will he be able to influence the patients? You know, all of these things go into it. So I'm not sure that the the psychiatric facility around here would admit me. So there's a second reason there why you would have less, you'd be admitted less, basically. So that's the method. Seems a bit extreme. One thing I should have told you up front, and one thing you should know, I mean, you probably know this already, but you can go 30 days without eating. Okay? So that's my approach. It's based on great men. You look at how Gandhi used it at one point in Gandhi's life, and I don't want to get too much into this, but you can go back and study it. He stopped fighting, basically. There were people fighting, and he vowed to go on a hunger strike to death to stop the fighting, and it worked. Okay. One thing I want to get into here at the end is, I told you, hey, I'd been admitted 4 times into the psychiatric facilities, and I am not convinced I have a mental illness. This is not uncommon, okay? Depends on your perspective, really. Okay, and I may or may not get into other videos about why, and things like that. I'll say here at the end that earlier on in my life, I was engaged in what is considered high risk behavior, right? I was traveling in the U.S., sometimes sleeping in my car. I would go out at night, things like that, right? I've changed some of the things that I'm doing, like I have a stable job, right? There's less risk right there, okay? I don't go out really past 10 p.m. much. And things like that. So if you are fed up with being hospitalized against your will, consider this. I mean, I'm not telling you what to do, but try something new. So thanks for listening.